Summer of '85, French indie period drama out in theaters. Now, the story starts with a teenager named Alex in a courthouse being accused of something, and through voiceover narration, we learn that this past summer he's had some pivotal experiences in his life and that some of that involved a death. We then flash back and forth between the present, where he's being asked to write down the story of what happened to him, and the past, where we see that story unfold in real time, starting with Alex being out on a boat on the ocean and that boat capsizing. And he is saved by an older boy named David. He is this 18-year-old dashing young man, long hair, white smile, very classical features, certainly attractive and very charming, but also there is something odd about him. David takes Alex back to shore, invites him home, where he offers him food and warm clothes, and the two of them immediately begin their friendship, which will quickly turn into something more than a friendship, which will then lead to tragedy. So it's kind of like a French version of Call Me By Your Name, although much, much weaker. I have to say, I did not enjoy the film all that much. I think it has a promising first half, but then fizzles out by the end, and some of the aspects of its execution in general just didn't work for me. I'll start with the good stuff. I liked the atmosphere of the French seaside. I liked the performance of Benjamin Voisin as David. He has that quality which makes him seem, attractive and charming, but also weirdly creepy at the same time, which definitely fits in with the story itself. I think that story, as a very general skeleton, is interesting because it explores teenage love that ends up hurt and broken. This love for one person, falls for another, feels for another, but not necessarily the other way around, where there's confusion about the expectations and different approaches to exclusivity and the seriousness of a relationship, and how important those experiences then later on turn out to be in the life of a teenager, which is something that I think most of us have experienced at one point. But as I said, that works for about half of the film, because after the pivotal moment that happens, the movie takes a serious dive. I like the music as well, particularly one sequence at a disco place that uses Rod Stewart's Sailing in an amazing dance scene, which then immediately transitions into this extended, love summer montage. I thought that was by far the best part of the film. Now, for the things that I didn't like, I think that the structure of the film, with flashing back and forth, is weird, especially in the last half. In the last half of the film, when the events of the past somewhat start to catch up with the present, and it becomes really confusing as to the sequence of those events. What happened before? What after? Are we in the present? Are we in the past? Is it one stream now? This ties in with Alex behaving fairly erratically in the second half. I mean, I couldn't follow his actual state of mind because he would act in wildly different ways from one scene to another, which didn't really make any sense to me. The film also heavily uses voiceover narration from Alex, which I said in the beginning, which is supposed to be, him writing down the story afterwards. Problem with voiceovers in general is they're difficult to execute in a meaningful way, because very often they just become a crutch for the writer. They have the character talk about what happened or how they felt or their state of mind instead of showing it through their actions. And that is generally a weak way to shoot a movie, which is a visual medium. I'd rather learn stuff by seeing them in action rather than hearing the explanation just straight up. And that's definitely the case here, as often the narration literally spells out what is happening on screen at the same time, or how the characters feel, even when it's evident just from the image. I mean, compare that to Call Me By Your Name, where a lot of the times you had a whole wealth of information told just by facial expressions or the way characters looked like. I mean, the final shot of the film speaks for itself. And as a final point, going back to Summer of '85, there are moments in the film which I think were meant to be comic relief and funny and so on, but they're very, very weird. Prime example, there's a scene in the beginning of the film where the mother of David shows up. She first meets Alex because David brought him back home after the boat fell off. And she meets Alex, who is most definitely underage, by the way. She takes him to the bathroom, she draws him a bath, and then she tells him to undress. And when he's visibly reluctant, she literally takes his clothes off and compliments his penis. I mean, what the fuck? I was wildly uncomfortable seeing this, and I was surprised that it actually drew some laughs at the audience. Think about it like this: reverse the situation, and instead of a middle-aged woman and teenage boy, imagine that scene with a middle-aged man and a teenage underage girl. You would think this is fucked up, and so I think applying the same standards, you have to think, you know, just what were the filmmakers thinking here? In any case, I think that this movie had a lot of potential, and there are individual things in it that are interesting or working, but on the whole, it just doesn't deliver. It becomes too unfocused by the end and loses sight of what it's actually trying to do, which is a shame.